Hey everybody, Ronarray here, and today I want to showcase my endgame version of my Glacier Ice Sorcerer build. The build is pretty fun, it can reach 100% critical strike chance, while constantly staying on top of mana, and generating thousands of ward per second. Let's go further and see how it plays on higher corruption, how well it works in the endgame, and how you can build it to deal with all the endgame threats. So talking about how the build works. The main important part for us to stack a crazy amount of mana. And together with Repellent Frost, we can reach 100% critical strike chance. Because we can use Repellent Frost, which will raise the basic crit chance for Glacier itself, and stack it together with additional passives such as Calculated Destruction, which will provide critical strike chance per 1 intelligence. After it, we can stack a lot of intelligence on top of everything, reaching close to 100 or even a little more than 100 intelligence, bringing crazy amount of critical strike chance. It will lead us to 100% critical strike chance, and because of that, we can get our mana back from critical rejuvenation. That way, all our critical hits with Glacier will grant mana equal to percentage of your maximum mana. So if you have a lot of mana, we will get 1% with every crit. And since the Glacier pretty much hitting the enemy 3 times, we can get mana 3 times even if the boss is completely alone. When you are hitting a lot of enemies, it will regenerate a lot of mana, especially since you are receiving even more mana by Cold Victory when you are killing enemies and receiving mana because of that. Stacking all of that together, we can also focus on our survivability, which will be Ward. With Twisted Heart of Ankyros, we can pretty much convert our health to crazy amount of Ward. Since we are stacking in a lot of intelligence, it will be much easier to get Ward retention. We also stack in a really cool passive called Lost Knowledge. That way we'll be able to receive ward based on current mana. And since we're regenerating a lot of mana, we also should be close to the maximum all the time. So we are stacking ward from Akeros, we are stacking ward from Lost Knowledge, and we have a really great ward retention, up to 400% based on our huge intelligence. So talking about our passive 3 skills, I'm generally taking the Glacier. And with the Glacier, it's pretty simple. We are going for Breaking Point, we are going for Greater Destruction, and for Morditas Bane for the bosses damage. Then we are going to the left, taking Chilling Force, Greater Chilling, and Endless Force, just for hit damage against chilled enemies. And after that, the most important part, we are going down there. We are taking 2 points into Resplendent Frost. Mostly 2 points is pretty much enough to reach 100% critical strike chance. After that, we are taking Critical Rejuvenation and Cold Victory. We already talked about them, and both of them will help us to stay the maximum mana. So if your crit strike chance is not 100%, you can pretty much get 1 more point to Resplendent Frost. But since we are losing critical strike multiplier, therefore losing damage, I generally recommend to just go 2 points there. No more than 2, because we still need 2 points to go for critical rejuvenation anyway, and we can lower it to 1. So talking about other skills, for Flame Ward, I'm generally going up there for additional charge. So Stalwart, Desperate, Fuel, and additional charge. And I'm taking Astonish because I think Astonish works pretty well right now. After that, I'm going down there, mostly for Mental Ages. Since sometimes we need additional protection, I think Mental Ages works pretty good. That way we can use our mana as a tanking pool that will protect our health. That way we can survive a little better. I'm also taking 3 points into Dilation, because that way we'll have duration and mana efficiency for the Flame Wall. Moving forward for the Teleport, I'm going with a little unusual state. I'm taking 5 points in the Crystalline Passage for additional armor, together with Time Dilation for more stat buff duration, and after that I'm going to the right for Mirror Images. I really think the Mirror Images are working good both in Arena and higher corruption, because they can taunt enemies and they can pretty much tank some stuff for you. They are dying pretty fast, but you're creating a lot of them, and they will just make you take like less pressure for enemies. If you don't like a lot of mirror images and you want to drop that, you can go for out of body instead. So that way we can stack more ward even when we are not really fighting anybody and just converting our health. However, it's not that important in my opinion, and I stick with mirror images for now. I'm also taking focus against the bosses, because sometimes we need to regenerate mana mostly for the bosses cases. At the 3 I'm taking Iron Stance for more armor, together with Mana Flooded and Desperate Meditation, because that way we'll be able to receive even more mana based on missing mana. That one is pretty important because without it we'll be unable to regenerate mana pretty good. After that I'm going down here with Prismatic Stance and Overcharge. With Overcharge, I'm just overcharging every time I'm doing the boss, and I'm trying to receive additional mana on top of that. So I think it could be pretty useful in some cases. And the last skill that I'm using is Snap Freeze. Snap Freeze is pretty unusual, but I think it's really important to have it in higher corruption and against harder bosses, because it will give you a great chance for huge freeze duration against all the bosses in the game. That way, I'm taking the Snap Freeze together with Cryomancy for more duration, and Sapworms, because that way we can steal some cold resistance and make the damage higher. I'm also taking Snow Flurry for cooldown reduction and mana efficiency, together with Adept, just to kind of, cast it faster. So I think it's pretty important. On top of that, you can also go for Black Hole, and while running, I'm using the Black Hole in general, just without any kind of specs, to crowd control enemies a little better. So some of my gameplay could be with the Black Hole. You can just respect the focus, and that works pretty good. For bossing condition, you can also go for Arcane Ascendance. I currently don't really think there's like a lot of point for it, but if you want more burst damage, Arcane Ascendance could be an option just to replace your focus or a Snap Freeze. So it will work just fine. So talking about our passive 3, our basic passive 3 in the mage is pretty simple, we're just taking enough points to proceed further. So Scholar, Arcanist, Mage Flurry and Knowledge of Destruction. None of them are too important, and we are going forward with that. And Sorcerer, the most important part is Calculated Destruction, so always 5 for the additional bonus. After that we are taking Arcane Momentum and a Sense of Clarity. I'm taking all for Mana Shell just to survive better. Lost Knowledge is pretty important, I already mentioned that, so we need it for Ward. I'm not really taking a lot on Crackling Precision, and I will explain why that a little later. So 4 points for Recollection and 5 for Archmage. I'm also taking only 1 point for Arcane Insight, that way we can have Intelligence and chance for Insight itself. You can also take some Elemental Ascendance if you will need more Elemental Resistances. But generally I recommend Elemental Affinity in the Spellblade for the same idea, because it will give you 3 points of Elemental Resistance per point against 2. And the most interesting part comes from the Rune Master. I'm taking 6 in the Unsealed Mana, 8 to the Arcane Focus, and 8 for the Transcendence. I think Transcendence stacks pretty well with the build. We are getting a lot of health, we are getting ward per second, and we have enough intelligence to get additional ward per second. I'm also taking 5 points for Rune Ward Cataclysm, because Rune Ward Cataclysm will give you 15% almost clear damage for enemies who's at the low life. It will help you against the bosses, it will help you to finish off monsters, and I think it works pretty good. So 5 points for Rune Ward Cataclysm is pretty much enough to stack our critical strike chance to the maximum. If it's still not 100 for you, you can add 1 more point there. I'm also taking Scribed Instrumentist, because critical strike multiplier with Wand completely amazing. So if your critical is not enough, just stack Knowledge of Destruction, 1 point to Rune Ward Cataclysm, or you will have some options to stack Intelligence through Arcane Insight. So let's talk about our items. In the items, I'm trying to focus on mana, intelligence, and additional bonuses such as critical strike multiplier. At one of the ring we are going for necrotic resistance, intelligence, poison and health. At the second we are going for elemental resistance, intelligence again, poison and physical. At the helmet, generally I go for intelligence, more life and some armor. It should add mana base, it's pretty important because it will help you to stack your mana. At body armor, mana base is really recommended too. You can get mana or intelligence with level 2 Glacier, together with some armor or some health. At the boots we need a base with cold resistance, because we are receiving a lot of lightning and fire resistances from our passives, and we need cold to just pretty much push it forward for resistances to meet at some point. Otherwise, intelligence, movement speed and health is really recommended. Make sure to get critical strike avoidance at least 30%, because it will stack pretty well with your critical strike avoidance from blessings. As a gauntlets, I'm going for void resistance, mana and intelligence. Also, chance to shred armor on hit is pretty important. I'm getting it on amulet as well, together with critical strike multiplier, health and spell damage. When you're shredding armors of the enemies, they're receiving more cold damage from you as well, so it works for cold damage. Don't worry if you're doing only elementals, still try to stack it on all the items if it's possible. On the wand, I generally recommend to go with critical strike multiplier, spell damage and penetration. The last stat can vary, it can be chance to shock or chance to slow enemies on hit. On your offhand catalyst, probably the most important item right here, because it will help you to get 100% critical strike chance. You will need to get 6% spell critical strike chance on your catalyst. Try to find the catalyst with such number. Otherwise, just go with mana, spell damage and some resistances, which will help you to cap what you have not capped. For Twisted Heart of Ankyros, just to aim for increased health right here and some STR, because it will help you to stack your armor. For idols, we are going with mana, increased armor and mana itself, like 4 times. I'm also using Throne of Ambition because it still works pretty well for cold damage and fire damage, because we can stack the damage that way. I'm also using Stout Idols here for increased health and elemental resistance, just to push elemental resistance higher. So covering our blessings, it's pretty simple. We need critical strike avoidance, try to aim for 70% because it will be really good. You will need to have 100 critical strike avoidance stacked with critical strike avoidance on your items. So we're also getting armor right here, together with chance to shred cold resistance, it works pretty well. Mana here is pretty important, try to get at least 80, well it will be pretty good. Grand Hunger of the Void is pretty important just to make sure we always have enough spell leech. Since we are losing a lot of health because of the Heart of Ankyros, Grand Hunger of the Void spell damage leech as health is the main way how we are receiving our health back. And everything else is pretty much drop rates, you can get whatever, like the ones that you need and like, and it should work just perfect for you. So talking about our stats, generally we aim to cap all resistances. As you can see, my physical right now is not capped, just because I changed my amulet recently, but try to get all of them to at least 74, because that way you will survive much better on the higher content. We're aiming for armor, at least 40% of reduction, because it will help a lot. Word retention should be around 350, maybe 400, and you will need around 100 intelligence for that. Mana is pretty much enough if you push around 900 or 1000 mana. At the health, I generally stay around higher than 2400, so anything higher will be enough. Try to ultimately just aim for 3000. And critical strike multiplier is 350 and higher. It should work just fine. And additional bonuses such as spell damage and cold damage will be good if you can get 500 or a little higher as well. So that's pretty much how your stats should look, so your build will be able to perform just fine. You also can improve your items and push it a little further as well. There's always a possibility to grow, since my items are definitely not perfect. So it was my Glacier Ice Sorcerer build. It performs pretty well in the endgame, and I will try to push corruption even further on my further streams as well. Thank you very much for watching, please like and subscribe for more RPG content, and see you next time.